a meeting to order at 1:30 on the 27th. And we'll do a quick roll call. We have myself, looks like all of the listed members are here with the addition of Bobby Spagnola and Jay. Welcome here, thank you. All right, and do we have anybody listed for public comments? No public comments at this time. Communications. Is there any communications there, David?
No written communications, Chair.
We just need to go through down to item D, approval of minutes. Anybody are opposed to approving the minutes from the last meeting on November 14th, 2023?
Chair, happy to move approval of minutes.
Need a second?
Yep.
All right. Cool. Let's go ahead and approve the minutes from November 14th, 2023. And move right into E, the new business. Item number 1 is the discussion on the water and wastewater operator in training program.
All right. Thank you, Chair, Vice Mayor. The discussion item today under new business. Item number 1 is water and wastewater operator training. This has been an item that's been on the future agenda item for a period of time. And we're bringing it for discussion by the subcommittee and ultimately seeking your recommendation on next steps and how to proceed. So a little bit of background. The wastewater and water operator training position has been something that we've discussed for quite a bit of time internally. It's really an important position to establishing and meeting the requirements to become ultimately an operator one, whether it's a wastewater operator or a water operator. And there are different requirements under state law that apply to each of these positions. We have job descriptions for both the water and wastewater OIT positions. They're both listed as covered positions within the within the MOU for the classified employees group. At the very end of the MOU is the current salary schedule for the OIT positions. One of the things to note is, it's kind of shown here, we don't have a salary range established for the wastewater treatment plant operator training, but we have a established salary schedule for wastewater 1, but not 2. And it's kind of the flip side with respect to water. We have a pay scale or salary range established for the operator in training, but not for the water treatment plant operator 1, but for 2. So again, just want to kind of cover this point because we'll probably spend a little bit of time on it. In wastewater, we don't have a salary range for operator in training or 2. In water, we don't have a salary schedule established for the 1, but we do have it for OIT. One of the things we're going to touch on a little bit about is what steps we might take to establish a salary range for the OIT for wastewater, and maybe correspondingly look at addressing the other positions where there's not a formal salary range for those other operators. But what we wanted to do is take a little bit of time and kind of going over the state requirements for both of these positions. These again are critical utility positions that are recognized by the state of California and the regional board. The OIT position in wastewater actually has to apply, and maybe apply is not the right word, but submit to the state board, and it becomes a kind of a state board listed position, whereas it's not the same with respect to the OIT in water, in my understanding. But there's really a whole series of grades that are applicable to both water and wastewater. And not only is it important as a profession, but it's important because our permits to operate both our water treatment plant and our wastewater treatment plant have requirements for the level of operators that have to be in place to meet the requirements. And as my understanding for our wastewater plant, we are required at a minimum to have a wastewater operator 2, grade 2. And I think with water, there's some question as to whether it has to be a grade 2 or grade 3.
No, we have to have a grade 2 as our senior officer. Grade 3 is our senior.
A grade 3 at the water treatment plant. So there we have it. Grade 2 for our senior operator at the wastewater treatment plant, and grade 3 for our senior operator at the water treatment plant. And we currently meet that requirements. Our incumbent senior operator at the wastewater plant is none other than Jay Robinson. And then for our water treatment plant, of course, it's Darren Hernandez, and we appreciate all the work they put into maintaining their certifications so that we are in compliance with the law and meet regional board requirements. One of the things we see in terms of these positions or that we have is a sense of urgency. It's good to have the OIT just from a succession planning perspective to be prepared for the future. Who's going to take on those roles when the incumbents retire, move on, or otherwise leave their current positions. But again, falling back on we have to have those positions, or we have to have the operators meet certain grade requirements. We're apprised that the current incumbents that meet or serve as our wastewater operators are kind of looking at retirement in the future. We don't have any dates set or any specific dates to share, but I think this is a good time to start some of the planning work to fill the OIT to, at a bare minimum, make sure we're positioned to meet the state licensing requirements by having a 2 position in place. We'll certainly look at other options when the time comes to fill, especially some of the more senior, more experienced professionals, through possible recruitment. But it's good to have a plan in place if we can fill those positions internally. That's we want to have multiple paths, a redundancy built in. And so what I want to do is turn it over to our Public Works Director to give a little bit of background on the certification requirements. And maybe Derek, you could walk through both with Vice Mayor and Council Member, our subcommittee members, the certification requirements and some of the key differences between the wastewater position OIT and the water position OIT.
So, can I ask a quick question before we do that? So in the water department, we need at least a number 3 operator.
Yes.
And then wastewater a number 2.
Yes.
Can we have 2 number 3s and 2 number 2s in each department?
Sure. As long as you meet the minimum. You can have 2 grade 3 officers in one department. You can have 2 grade 2.
So
But the minimum is at least 1 of each at each.
And then that's gonna be your senior operator as grade 2.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And how many do we have now? Like Jay's
Jay is the senior operator with the grade 2 license.
Right.
And Tony McDonald is the wastewater 1, and he has a 1 license. And that's the whole wastewater department.
Can he get a 2 license?
Tony can get a 2, yes,
And then why isn't he doing
because he is kind of on the same career track as Jay.
Possible retirement.
Possible retirement.
it? How about the water treatment plant?
The water treatment plant has 1 employee that does have his wastewater 2, I believe. Darren has wastewater 2, so he could be acting, but what we're looking for is someone to put in that position full time.
Yeah,
So in interim, we could have him down there, but it's hard to be the senior operator for two facilities at the same time.
okay, and how about in the water treatment plant? Is there a backup number 3 already?
Trevor it has a 2. And he is applicable, he could take his 3 if he chooses,
Well,
but there's no current backup 3 now.
can we,
But they're farther away from what we would call the retirement time.
can he start training for his 3 now?
Yes, he has the time and he could just go take it if he likes.
Can we entice him to do that? And I'm not saying that this would undermine hiring anybody to replace.
Right.
I mean, I still want to move forward.
Yeah, we can provide him that, but his current position only requires him to have a 2.
All right.
So we
And
can't mandate him to have something that's.
Now, how about the new employees that we're thinking of hiring? Would they be mandated to get a 2 and a 3?
We're not, well, so we're hoping to possibly do an internal, transfer.
and let me touch on a point, I think, what might be helpful, Councilmember Walter, is, what we have built into, again, this is, something that is subject to labor negotiations, but we have established a table within the MOU that provides cert pay. And what that does, and at least in my opinion, is try to incentivize those employees that don't have the certs that are required. So there's what's called minimum qualifications. So you don't necessarily get cert pay if it's what we call MQ or minimum qualification. But if it's above and beyond your position minimum qualification, so in this instance, we have an operator 2, and they're not required by their position to have a grade 3 license. But if they get that grade 3, they get cert pay. So that's how we try to incentivize that. Now, whether it's, enough incentive or not, that's something that we talk about during labor negotiations with those groups, but we try to incentivize them getting certificates beyond just saying, it's an economic benefit for them as an individual. We try to kind of
You can't really
incentivize
make
it.
it mandatory because you get people that are like, hey, I'm filling the bill, but it comes down to the choice.
And another thing for the kind of the initial push for the OIT for the wastewater department. The mandated in time that has to be invested into getting these certifications. So a grade 1 wastewater, right? It states you would have to have a full year of work experience to take the test. So a grade 1 water treatment, you have to have no experience, right? So we're already looking at to get a grade 1 to backfill like 1 year. Well, then to be able to take the 2 tests, that's 18 months with a 1 in full-time position. So
3 years.
30 months.
Yeah.
Minimum, if you do everything perfectly. So, you add 6 months for here and there and whatnot. So 3 years before internally we could produce a wastewater 2. So it's a 3-year commitment right there. I think that's kind of why we want to put this on the forefront and get someone in this OIT position, because we know that if we want to internally promote through the ranks, the OIT, the 1 and the 2, it's going to be a 3-year commitment from us to get this person the time and the knowledge there
Right.
to even take the test.
18 months to be able to take the 1 test, right?
12 months to take the 1 and 18 to take the 2, so
Gotcha.
30 months, right?
After you have the 1 already.
Yes. So 30 months collectively, but that's, you can't, it's not gonna happen the day and the day.
And that's everything working perfectly.
Everything. So if you gave it 6 months on top of that, you're at your 3-year mark. So we're looking at a 3-year commitment to produce a 2 in our system. During that time, it's very likely that there could be retirements or in and around that time. To get a water treatment, you could take it with no work experience. To take the 2, you have to have college credits and work experience. With a year, and then to take the 3, I think it's another year and then more work experience. So that's like a 24-month commitment, right, as opposed to 3 years.
For water treatment.
Yeah, to produce that 3.
Mhm.
So we're kind of like a year off, so if we're thinking about replacing or adding individuals, I think staggering these two events by a year kind of lays it out.
Yeah.
So they happen at the same time at the end. It's just the work experience needed to get that grade 2 is just takes time. It's just so much more of an investment. I mean, there is loopholes where your 18 months goes down to 12 months if you have.
Jake, let me interrupt you really quick. Can you guys, it looks like your camera turned off.
No,
So there
are we
is,
back on?
Yeah, you're live again. Thank you.
there is, different ways of going about it to cut the time frame down.
So you're saying start the wastewater guy, so it's 3 years commitment technically,
Right,
then stagger a year later,
yeah, exactly.
turn around and get an OIT for
Yeah,
the water.
and then the finish line is the same.
Gotcha, that makes sense, okay.
Okay.
But counting on the perfect world though,
Yes.
like you go sit and take the test, guess what you got?
Yeah.
You know what I
exactly.
mean, so.
So,
Yeah.
We don't see.
There's some timing differences, I guess,
Yeah.
I think what, Director Montani's, outlining, and. I think it kind of gets back to the salary schedules as well, where the OIT for water has a 5-step.
Mhm.
Where the wastewater doesn't have any steps established or salary range period. Internally, we've talked about, well, what work should we do to reestablish that salary? And ultimately, we have to bring that back to the representative for classified to negotiate that salary. But we were thinking that it rather than a 5-step system for that OIT, it may just be one fixed salary. And that being that the person who serves as the OIT serves for 1 year. And once they complete the exam, because, for all intents and purposes, we've hired a full-time employee.
Mhm.
Once that full-time employee graduates by passing the exam, they become an operator 1. In theory, it's, at the end of 12 months sometime, it's not gonna be a perfect,
Right.
unless the stars align
Yeah.
exactly 12 months. So just food for thought on the salary range, is because we do have a 1 salary, step range, we could peg the OIT to say like 5% below the 1. And that would give that person who serves as that OIT career path to get to the 1, and then you get the steps within that range.
So once he or she passes the test and gets a 1, then they start the step process.
Right.
Gotcha.
That's kind of a thought process.
Yeah.
Now, when you go back and you think about the 5 steps in this context, does it make sense? Because it's the 5 steps is really designed for progressive improvement for most employees over a 4-year span. You start at step 1, then a year later, step 2, and so forth. Whereas that's not going to necessarily be the case for an OIT.
Yeah.
It's once they complete the exam and they
That
become.
makes sense.
To kind of give you an example that I think is relevant here is what we did with our police officer trainee. We pegged that position 5% below the police officer salary. When the officer completed their training, they became a police officer, they basically got that 5% increase, started at step 1 in the police officer range, which again, to negotiate it.
I mean, that makes perfect sense. Because I don't think, this is just my opinion, if you don't have the qualification, but you're working to attain that qualification, you shouldn't be in a step process yet. Those are the guys that have the experience that are running. You're relying on those folks to give you your training. So they're doing more work and they're in the step process already. If you're just doing it, you're starting from square 1.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that makes perfect sense. And once you get your qualification, boom,
You shouldn't
That's
want
what-
to be at OIT for 5 years.
No, you shouldn't want to, you're right, and if you do, that's on you. You know, so.
Yeah, we want
Yeah.
that progression. I mean, ideally,
Right.
we have someone that is willing to, you know, want to progress and get, not only stop what they're wanting, but continue their training, continue their hours and move into be able to qualify to take the 2 tests and get
Right.
that 2 license. Now, that's an opportunity for us to try to create that pathway. And also, you know, it's a win-win for both that individual, but also for us by getting someone that has the grade 2 license to meet our permit requirements.
And so, and then they're obviously they know our system as it grows, and they're in our salary schedule,
Right.
from start to finish. It does kind of get hard when we say, let's just open it up to the outside world, where our salary schedule may not meet the opportunities that are out there for.
Well, that's what's tough, if you look at the difference between any of the towns around here, between Windsor, Healdsburg, whatever, and go to their water treatment 2 guys right now, look at the pay difference, there's, you know. It's nice to recruit from inside, bring them up and have somebody that's career minded, you know, 25, 30 years in Cloverdale.
Somebody, you already know their work ethic, you already know their work.
Right.
They know the system, our system.
Yeah, and it is important, you know, it's something we always do as part of labor negotiations. Of course, the representatives do a good job of representing their covered employees. But it's also important for the city to be mindful of what's happening in the market, because it's competition. It's last thing we want to do is train someone up through the OIT program, they pass the test.
Yeah.
And they take a position with a competing agency because they pay more. So, you know, again, that's in general the competitive space we all work in. All of our employees, you know, that's something we have to be, you know, aware of. And that's a kind of a labor strategy that we take up in closed session council.
So then when we hire these new individuals, they're not gonna work their way up to a 2, and then all of a sudden say, you know, I'm comfortable, I'm not gonna go to the 3. I mean, when
Well,
we
with
hire them-
wastewater, they can't,
well, how do we make?
water treatment, they can go for the 3, we're gonna try, we give them what they call a cert pay, even if they don't need the certification. And they take it, they get paid more.
That's the incentive.
We're hoping they'll take that incentive and know that, hey, I'm gonna get paid for more now. And then when the position opens, I'll already have what I need
Yeah.
to get paid even more.
How do we stop the hoping and make it part of their contract? If we're hiring you to be
That's
a 3, we want you to work
It's
your
a
way.
big negotiation there.
Yeah, 'cause, you know, it's hard to mandate something that's not
What am I saying?
needed for the position, right?
So I'm just gonna say, thanks to David and, Derek, you guys explained it pretty well as far as what what we're looking at as far as doing an OIT program. And getting that position, kind of in the works, so to speak, because of, possible, people retiring and or, moving, making some different changes in life, so, and that's the biggest part of it is, like, they explained, is it's. You have to have that time in there, and that's the kind of the essence, what I wanna say we're up against, but in a fact, kind of we are, so, kind of brought this a year ago, and then it came to light more recently, so, this is a great thing to be brought up right now, because like what you were saying, Brian, it's, you know, the 30-month mark, well, at 3 years right now, it's only 6 months difference, so, and that's only if everything goes right, so as far as taking the test and all that good stuff, so, but I'm just here just to I'm an advocate of of doing that, and hopefully there is somebody in-house that would like to do it, because the percentages obviously go up when you're having the in-house personnel, instead of, like David said, you're really not guaranteed if somebody comes from the outside, right? Derek mentioned it too. Somebody's from the outside, they might put their time in, they'll they'll use it as a stepping stone going someplace else, so that's a good reason why I'm here.
Look, I'm just flipping to the back of the book and reading the last page, at some point I would like to see 2 new employees in each department, so that we can withstand a retirement. And as a result of that, start training them for the positions now. And hopefully internal folks who want to move up one run on the ladder, while we have these other people that we just hired coming up the ladder behind them. But, as far as I'm concerned, go ahead and hire them. The devil's in the details, back to the council with the salaries and all, but yeah, there's no doubt we need a succession in management, and we don't have that now. And I don't know how you do that when you have an operator 2 that doesn't want to take the test for an operator 3. That's what I'm looking for. How do we hire these new people with the understanding, you don't stop at 1, 2, you go all the way to the end of your certification?
Well, I'm not sure if he just doesn't want to take it, I mean, there could be other.
No, I'm just not referring to any employee, I'm just saying, once we get new employees on board.
How do we make more incentive programs
Yeah.
into continuing?
Can we write in the contract, you're applying to become an operator 3, not that you're gonna be in charge, but you're gonna be an operator 3.
And it's hard to do to say, I'm hiring you at the bottom, guaranteeing you the top at some point.
Well, we did it with the police officer in the sense that we hired you to go through your training.
Well, no, for the OIT, that's exactly what we're gonna hire you as the OIT,
Right.
and then when you pass, we're guaranteeing you the treatment
Right.
one, right? That's for sure, but as you go down the line, it's harder.
Well, and it also
harder to
like
do that.
for water, for the water, not wastewater, but you get some folks that if you get a hot shot in here that comes in and does this time. And it's like, boom, I got my 1. Boom, I got my 2, and now the 2 that's sitting there like, hey, hold on, you now you're as qualified as me. That also is incentive, like, you know what? I'm gonna see what I can do and go in. I mean,
Competition.
exactly, it's a competition thing, so.
Well, in terms of, next steps, I think what we want is, or what we're asking for is, direction from subcommittee to move this forward. And ultimately, I think what we need to do, bring this back to council to, initiate, with the classified on establishing a salary, for a salary range for the, operator and training in wastewater. Again, just the proposal that's on the table, on that would be, peg it at 5% as a starting point. That would at least, we could bring that to the table, again, assuming council supports, and start that, we're kickstarting labor negotiations, so we could, we could prioritize that aspect to see if we can get it done. The other component is, just to be mindful, I want to do a check-in with, as we know, we have a rate study, a financial plan that was done for both of our wastewater enterprises. Add the fully burdened cost of those positions into that rate study and just do an assessment on what that looks like. I think there's sufficient wiggle room within those enterprises to add this position. There may be, an impact on, it could potentially be an impact on the timing of a capital improvement project to cover the costs, but I don't know that until we perform that analysis. And our rate consultant has all of our data, so they should be able to just say, okay, give us the fully burdened rate, plug that in, and do a look-see, because we just did a rate study update. I think it was last spring, to council. So we could do that again, just again, doing a check to make sure, because we would be adding positions in each one of those. Ideally, we would try to get that in place, as quickly as possible, so we could open those up for recruitment. And ultimately, we want to fill that into the budgets that we're in now. So it's all kind of function of timing with the meet confer process with the labor groups and, getting the financial analysis done.
Well, I think we should jump all over. I mean, it's a succession plan that we know we need. There's no way of getting around it. We need people in there when, Jay or Tony take off, or, Darren and Trev take off. We need people. We can't be stuck without it. So, yeah, I'd say we move it forward to council and see what we gotta do, check the rate study, see if we can come up with that. And if so, let's move it along and recruit, because, I mean, time's running out.
Right.
So this is one of those things, and I like staggering it too, 30 months, 24 for wastewater versus water. I mean, the finish line's the same, and it would be nice, so I'm all for that.
I don't know that we can't run them both simultaneously at the beginning, it's supposed to stagger, I mean.
24 months versus 30. So, but
I'm in favor of moving forward. It's, David, you and I have talked about, impacts it would have financially. I think the ratepayers would be far more upset to find us, 3 years from now with nobody to run the water treatment plant or the wastewater, and all of a sudden we're held hostage to state or whoever, if it's somebody in here. So,
yeah,
I'd like to get.
or we're held hostage to somebody coming from somewhere else that says, guess what, I have no problem stepping in Cloverdale. But here's what I want. I mean, he's driving the bus from that point forward.
There's a lot of staff internally that are working on trying to get their water treatment credentials on their own. And so they would be kind of a shoo-in for putting in these positions.
What do you mean on their own?
Like it's not required, but they're still continuing to do it.
That's a smart thing, especially for these younger generations that we have working. Hopefully they see the opportunity for a fairly decent wage and, getting to stay in their hometown.
It's definitely it's a tremendous opportunity for someone to establish as a career for themselves.
And I think I would encourage kind of cross-training, just like, Jay's got multiple certs. If there's any way to bake in some incentive, if you're going for a water career path, let's get you trained up in wastewater, just kind of help, relieve staff as needed. I'm not totally sure, but I feel like somewhere in this brain, I think that water actually has 2 certs. You have T for treatment, and then don't you have D?
Distribution.
Distribution, but I don't think there's a similar thing for wastewater. I think you're
Just the wastewater.
you don't have a collections
No.
certification,
No.
yeah,
The W covers collections,
And-
treatment,
oh.
and treatment plan.
right,
Yeah.
and so is that also getting baked into this?
Currently, all the employees have their
I see,
B2 license.
I see, okay,
I would. I
And D
think,
ones.
Yeah,
gotcha,
well, I don't think there's anyone on the utility public works staff that has it, everyone has D2s. Jay does, right?
The park staff my 2 guys have D1s
Yeah.
and I have.
Yeah, and all the utility workers have
Gotcha.
2s.
okay,
So, and that's kind of baked into their work. Job description, the utility workers have to have a distribution license to work on the system,
gotcha,
so.
And like for parks, we have a D1 requirement just because we're working on, not this, irrigation leaks that are using
Sure,
water.
right,
on ships,
right, right, I
smaller
see.
scale.
So anything else on that one? No, but no public? No, all right. We good on that?
Yeah, that direction.
Perfect.
We'll coordinate with Derek and bring this forward. And in an interim, we'll do the analysis on the financial plan and rate study, or if that's bring them forward with the recommendations of the subcommittee.
Awesome. All right, let's move on. New business. Item 2, discussion on the South Crest Reservoir outage hydraulic evaluation.
All right, well, Mike, if you can promote Mr. Jeffrey Wanless, Kirsten Miller, and Patrick Johnson or P. Johnston to panelists, that'd be great while I introduce this item. So included in your packet is a technical memorandum that was prepared by a team of engineers at West Yost. Joining us today are Kirsten Miller and Patrick, who led up the study. A little bit of background, and then I'll turn it over to the professionals to give you an overview of their work. We've seen a long-standing need to replace what we often call the Cherry Creek Reservoir. The long-standing name is Southcrest Reservoir, so you'll see those kind of terms used interchangeably. The Southcrest Reservoir is it's a 200,000 gallon tank, and it's one of our older tanks, steel bolted tank. And we previously had a feasibility study done in 2021 that looked at the feasibility of replacing that tank. Following that, it was determined that it's beneficial to conduct what's referred to as a hydraulic evaluation. The purpose of the hydraulic evaluation in large part is to ensure that when a new tank is installed and you take the existing tank offline, what impacts it's going to have on operational impacts it's going to have on the system. We have 3 pressure zones, and these tanks serve an important need in meeting the pressure requirements within our system, both for the hydraulic flow of water through the system, but also for our fire flow requirements. We want to make sure that when and if there is a fire, that when Cloverdale Fire connects, it's got the adequate pressure that they need to meet their needs. So West Yost was retained as part of moving this project forward to perform this hydraulic evaluation. And again, here today is Kirsten and Patrick, and they're gonna kind of walk us through what's otherwise is a pretty technical memorandum. And this is to ensure that as we move forward with this project, we've done our necessary due diligence to make sure that we address any operational impacts to our system while a new tank is being constructed. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kirsten and Patrick and Jeff. I don't know who wants to go first.
I think I'll go first, I guess. I'm Patrick Johnston. I was the project manager for this project, and Kirsten Miller worked with me on the analysis, and she did most of the analysis. So maybe I'll give an overview of it, and Kirsten can jump in and correct me when I make mistakes. I'll start with just a kind of an overview of our scope, and then talk about some of the results in general. As was said, our scope was to update the hydraulic model and use that to evaluate the system under the conditions of when the tank was out of service. So it was a look at how the system would operate when that tank was taken out of service in the interest of replacing it. So that was the focus of the modeling analysis. We also did an analysis of the storage requirements for the system. And the last piece of our scope was to do a peer review of a feasibility study that looked at different alternatives for replacing this tank. And that was from a few years ago. So I'll kind of keep it somewhat brief and then let you all ask questions of the parts that interest you. But for our demands, we developed kind of 3 sets of demands, one for our existing conditions and one that we called near-term conditions. That was done by coordinating with the planning department to identify some developments that are expected to occur in the next few years. So those demands were added to the existing set of demands. And then we had a build-out set of demands that we based on looking at the results of the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan. So that represents kind of demand, what the demand conditions are expected to be in 2040. So for the hydraulic model analysis, we looked at the near-term demands. So because we didn't really know when the tank replacement project would happen, but we expected it to happen in the next few years. So we used the model to evaluate the operation of the system under that near-term demand scenario. And we did a series of analyses to test system operation. And the result of that was that there is very little effect on the operation of the system when the Southcrest Reservoir is taken out of service. We can talk about some of the details if you want, but that's the general kind of conclusion of the hydraulic evaluation using the model. We also did the storage evaluation. So we evaluated the storage needs for the system under existing near-term and build-out conditions, and used that to identify what the storage deficit is expected to be under those three demand scenarios. So, and we identified some storage deficit under near-term and build-out conditions, both, and we identified what those numbers would be both without the Southcrest Reservoir in service and with the reservoir replaced at the same volume. So that helped us kind of get an idea of what the overall storage deficits might be if the reservoir were replaced in kind at the same size, and then give us some idea of what additional storage needs there might be. And I think our recommendation was to look at that again under the water master plan project that the city is considering in the future, just to get maybe a little more detailed look on what that storage deficit might be. And then finally was our peer review, where we looked at the feasibility study that had contained a look at alternatives for replacing the reservoir. So we gave a peer review of that and came up with sort of a recommendation for coming up with a 2-tank solution for replacing the Southcrest Reservoir outage. And it was our understanding that that's what the city is interested in, and we think that's the best approach as well. So that is kind of an overview of our report. We're happy to answer more questions about it or go into more detail if there are items that you'd like more detail on.
Maybe Patrick, can you you or Kirsten share with Vice Mayor and Chair and Council Member the perspective on the size of storage that we would like to see be constructed in this as a replacement? Right now, we have a 200,000 gallon tank. And maybe just touch on that a little bit, just what we're looking at in terms of an increase in the amount of storage, because you mentioned we would have a storage deficit.
Yeah. So a storage deficit, we looked at the storage requirements for existing near-term and build-out conditions. And we do include a table in the report that looks at what this expected storage deficit would be under each of those demand scenarios. So I think for planning purposes, it would be our recommendation to kind of address what, take advantage of this project to address what the storage deficit would be under build-out conditions. So that is table 8 in our report. We identified a small storage deficit under build-out conditions when the Southcrest Reservoir is replaced at the same size. So what that means is that what I would recommend is that we make we find a solution at Southcrest at the Southcrest site to include additional storage to address that storage deficit. I'm not sure if I worded that correctly, but we're recommending increasing the storage at this site to address that storage deficit.
And is it correct that my understanding of the report is we're recommending increasing storage from 200,000 gallons, which is the existing tank, to 500,000?
Well, the storage deficit isn't that big. I mean, what you're getting at is that that would be another 250,000 gallons of storage. So the storage deficit that we identified is only 0.09 million gallons, so 90,000 gallons. Kirsten, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but at this point in our analysis, we would recommend that increasing the storage from 250 to 250,000 to 250,000 plus another 90,000 gallons.
At a minimum.
Yeah, that's
We're
what
talking-
we concluded. I think we also thought that there could be some further evaluation depending on when the master plan project, if the city proceeds with that, that's something that that project can focus on and provide an actual number from that evaluation. But from our evaluation, yes, an additional 90,000 would be the bare minimum.
I have a quick question. And, so we're talking basically about taking down the current tank that's there and just replacing it with a bigger tank, is that right?
No,
2 tanks.
So you're gonna have 2 tanks, okay, so
we'll
then,
build one, then demo the other and replace it.
okay, so we're gonna build 2 brand new tanks. I guess, the thing that kind of concerns me a little bit, I think there's a new housing development that's maybe 5 years old that sits below those tanks. And the weight of 2 tanks and that extra weight on that ground. Are we comfortable that the ground could support that? I guess we are.
Well, that actually segues into, I
Yeah.
believe, our next item E3, which would be Jeff. I see him smiling up there. We can talk about that.
Proposal for the projected
Oh,
tanks.
okay.
It's the next item.
Yeah, I think, Councilmember Walke, you raised a very intuitive question is the area for 2 tanks suitable in terms of the geology, the soils to support the weight of an additional tank with a larger capacity. And that's something that we haven't answered yet, but would be part of the scope of work.
Gotcha.
I
going
got
forward.
one that stands out right here too, is West Shields recommends revisiting the siting analysis to explore locating a new second tank within a previously unconsidered area. The potential benefit may be considerably lower project costs. I like everything about that. So that's my question. What do we know if we're talking an unconsidered area? What are we talking about?
Well, I think it's the larger site, and so I
Okay.
think you're looking at the technical memo and not the letter proposal in item number 3.
Yeah.
And so, just going out there and I look at the site and I'm like, boy, this is a tricky site. And, the experts in the room have said, oh, no, this is nothing. We've seen worse.
Gotcha.
And so, you throw enough money at something, you can engineer the heck out of anything. But, there's some, balance there and what's reasonably feasible and what's too expensive. And I think the hope is that we find a nice middle ground, that we have, at least 2 tanks, really for redundancy. I mean, the storage is the storage. You have a volume of water that you need to put on this hill.
Right.
The 2 tanks offers a lot of benefits. And so I think the difference, what you're looking at there is the comparison of the first feasibility study from a couple of years ago.
Anytime it says considerably lower project costs, I jump all over that.
We're all in, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely, absolutely. And so, I think as a whole, the team's definitely looking at that. And so this first step, the feasibility, really is just kind of asking those questions and bringing the issues up. And I think really it's gonna be, Jeff's group, as the next phase of this potentially, is really gonna kind of get into those weeds and answer those questions.
Yeah, so really what we're asking for council, or asking for the subcommittee is just to receive the report and accept it. I think from our perspective, it addresses the key question as to whether, if we, depending on how the tank is replaced, whether completely offline or you build a new tank and do it in some kind of fashion where you bring a new tank on and keep the existing in operation. Those are things that have to be determined yet, but that our system can continue to operate safely within appropriate parameters if it's necessary to take that tank offline.
For a short time.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
For sure, not forever.
right.
And then, it does answer the question that we do have a storage deficit. I think it can be addressed with a smaller size tank than what maybe staff at this point in time might otherwise recommend. We'd probably look at opportunity to increase storage to a certain extent. That can be done. Again, that'll be this next step, is what's the appropriate additional storage. And then there's cost consideration, alternatives there that we want to weigh. Obviously a bigger tank usually costs more, but what's the ratio for what we're gaining? So we'll that's where we'll rely on the experts to kind of help us with that, with answering that question. But again, this was a necessary analysis to kind of perform, to move us through, to move this project forward. And we want to answer this key question because of the health and safety implications before we start the design phase. So, Chair, really at this point, we're just asking for, if you accept the report and, if there's anything you need in terms of revisions or questions that you need answered, we can bring it back to the team, or otherwise, we just accept the report and move forward.
Yeah, forward, I'd say let's move forward with it.
Okay.
And we did, the new 250,000 gallon or 200,000 gallon is as big as we can get up there.
Well, I think that's gonna come out in this design. Now, I wanted to hedge my bets here, but
Okay.
considering, I think the bulk of cost is really in, mobilization. If you're gonna get out there anyways, increasing the size is really a very kind of minimal additional cost compared to, just putting a tank out there to begin with. And so, I think the existing tank's 200,000. It sounds like we need at least another about 100K just to kind of, get out to 2040. I think that there's potential to, upsize beyond that, and recognize the savings now, just planning out beyond 2040.
Now, are we still looking at like the 2 tank option too?
At a minimum, I think
Okay,
at one day
yeah.
Jeff told me he could potentially get 3 tanks up there, and I got all 2 of you.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go on the kind of record of why, we're referencing 2 tanks. And there's quite a bit of maintenance work that goes along with the tank. Their tanks, steel tanks, are subject to electrolysis, so they need to be, of course, you gotta have appropriate controls designed in those tanks, but they often have to be recoated, which means taking those tanks offline to be recoated.
They have to be inspected, yeah.
And scuba divers go in there, they have to be drained and so forth. So, but having 2 tanks, it provides that redundancy. If we need to take one completely offline to perform maintenance, we have the benefit of having the other tank in operation, and vice versa. So it gives us a lot more flexibility operationally. And then there's other operational parameters that can be managed too with 2 tanks, and managing water levels, and gives us a little extra, from my perspective, a little extra security to have that additional storage should we lose power, things like that. It gives us a little more supply during if we're experiencing an emergency. So, all right. Well, the next item is to begin the kind of the next phase in this important capital improvement project, and that would be to start initiate the design work for a new, as referenced in the proposal, above grade steel water storage tank at the Zone 1 South Crest tank site. Again, looking at replacing the existing with a different size or set of tanks. The scope of work provided in your packet is pretty comprehensive. It includes doing the necessary environmental work, the CEQA compliance, along with the design services, and usually design services in with these types of projects, they include what are referred to as 30, 60, and 90% design drawings. So the 30 is a little bit beyond kind of concept. It's you're not necessarily gonna have all the electrical line drawings, but you've got something that's gonna be a good basis for design going forward. 60%, again, a little closer, you can start looking at updating, getting more detailed cost estimates. And then 90, and that's, you know, when you're kind of at that almost final stage. There's still a lot that has to go in that last 10%, but that's pretty standard. You'll see that in with most design proposals for these types of water or even wastewater projects is 30, 60, 90% design submittals for review. And that's just making sure we're tracking along in the process. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Wallace.
Well, I don't know what you want to know, but I can talk if you like. So our scope of work includes, as mentioned, environmental compliance. We're also, I did look through the initial feasibility study and the geotechnical report. I do not concur with the recommendations of the original geotechnical report. I think they're proposing a very expensive foundation system. And so I'm bringing on one of my geotechnical engineers who's helped me design over 20 tanks, and we think we can get a cheaper solution for the foundation. And to address your other comment, we will also make sure that the tanks aren't going to add too much weight and cause problems for downstream residents. And we will also be looking at the 2-tank versus 1-tank option. So that's all included in our scope of work that I think you guys all have for you. And I am happy to answer any other questions.
And that, you know, here's the thing, there's, you know, anytime you engage in a project of this magnitude, it comes with it a budget estimate. And so for the critical budget piece here, the scope of work totals $668,705, which is on page 12 of the proposal.
Now, part of that proposal is I asked the team here to bake in, like they call them LID features, so low impact development. It's basically a water quality feature intended to collect stormwater. I don't know that this project is going to trigger any requirement for that. There are some state requirements for projects to trigger that. I don't think this project is going to do it, but there's potential if we bake in this sort of water quality and groundwater recharge that we could be lined up for grant funding if some of the stars align. And so that's an extra feature that I asked the team to put in there, just hoping to line up that we could potentially be a little bit more competitive for grant funding for the construction.
And you know, that raises a good point, City Engineer Aptaka, is that, you know, sometimes with grant opportunities, what you see with the application process is a project shovel ready? And you know, that's also helpful when you're doing that 30, 60, 90 design, because you have something a little more concrete to actually base your grant application on. And so, you know, we will be mindful as this project goes forward, assuming we get support of those opportunities for grant funding. At this stage, we don't see a lot of opportunities out there, but again, as we get into it, and the project becomes a little more closer to completion, you know, it kind of gets us more ripe for funding, you know, grant applications.
And as the study goes, and as you start writing the report, if you hit a snag where you find something that's going to be prohibitive for this project to go forward, you stop right there and let us know.
I think that's kind of the intent of like the 30 to 60, 90 is, yes, you know, there's, you know, at the 30%, there's plenty of room for a course correction if that's needed.
And Vanessa, are we doing like keeping our water guys, our measly 2 water guys that we have, that we covet? are we keeping them in the loop on all of this too? Like, I mean, that's a lot of institutional knowledge we have right there.
It is.
Yeah, they're on all the meetings
Okay, cool.
and the engineers and stuff.
Gotcha.
They're very.
I'm a big fan of getting operator input at all
Gotcha.
levels. You know, they're the guys that have to take care of this stuff. at the
Yeah,
end of the
that's
day.
kind of where I was
Because
thinking.
the
Yeah.
engineers go home.
Right,
Those are the guys that are out there, as you know,
yeah.
doing the hard work, really.
Yeah, our senior operator's been copying on all of the email correspondence related to the hydraulic evaluation and move this forward. I know it's something that's a high priority for our team.
Yeah.
And then getting back to the proposal itself, included in the proposal is what was referred to as an optional task. It's task 7. They call it engineering services during construction, or ESDC. And my recommendation would be we included that's construction administration and inspection as a city representative. We really do rely on having experts do the inspection work, oversee the contractor during the process. So, that's not a inexpensive line item. But it's a critical line item, and I appreciate that Westio's put that in upfront.
Yeah.
Because often we are looking at the back end saying, oh, we need to do this, and you have to kind of go through that exercise at that time where we can kind of build that in at the early phases of the design project, so.
Do we have SQL in there?
We do.
Question, anyone else have any questions?
Anyone?
Anyone, Jay, got a question?
No, everyone's good.
So this would require council approval. With your support, we'll bring this forward. I would refer to our city engineer if we could put this on the March 13th council agenda.
I think so, yeah, if you
Yeah.
guys are in agreement, we can get in the push this
Say let's
forward.
move it forward. Put it on the agenda. Everybody happy with that? Yep. All right.
All right, thank you, team.
Thank you.
We are down to number 4, Citrus Fair and Cloverdale Boulevard street signs.
Yeah, so Floyd Wilson had contacted us at the Public Works Department. He was unhappy with the status of the Cloverdale Boulevard and Citrus Fair street signs at that particular intersection. We kind of,
Could you, just let me know who that is?
Floyd Wilson,
Yeah,
he just put in a service request.
He's a resident.
Yeah, he's a resident. He's just a resident, yeah.
okay.
And we did kind of have had a couple of reports of this intersection with poor signage. So what we have is on the northwest corner of that intersection, there's a single street tree sign, and it's for the city standard 704. There's nothing else there, but he was asking if we could add another street tree at the opposite corner, which it's a kind of a cluttered intersection, and staff's kind of recommendation is to go with the signage that is on the rest of the city, matching that's on the traffic lights. And you can see the Cloverdale intersection has no hanging street signs on the traffic signs. It's a single street tree. And so staff recommending taking the route of possibly contracting with a DC Electric or a sign company, and having these signs made and mounted in these locations to match the other locations in the city.
Which route I'm going. I like the ones right like that right there.
Yeah.
So if you put those street trees up, you can guarantee between the stop sign used to be over by the school and by Citrus Fair, the stop sign. That got taken out, I don't know how many times. The same thing's gonna happen with these things you put on the curb. They're gonna get hit. And we're in the same boat, but they look great. We haven't had an issue with them down there at the end of town.
This is the way to go.
Let's do it.
I drew a little square there. There's actually no sign there at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're highly reflective.
Yep.
Right, so
Yeah,
during
standard
power outages,
And street trees have a limitation on height, so.
Mhm.
we would like to go with the,
That's my suggestion.
If you're, okay, it doesn't seem like this needs to go to council, we can just, take direction and,
I'd say just-
get this installed.
All right, any other questions on those? All right, let's move into F, standing items, update, Lighter Ranch.
Okay, not a whole lot to report on Lighter Ranch. We received council approval to submit our initial preserve access operation maintenance costs to the board of supervisors as serving as the board of directors. That's in process. And I know our park superintendent has already reached out to open space with staff, and they'll be reviewing it as well. I'm sure ultimately they'll be tasked with bringing it forward to the board of supervisors with a formal recommendation after they review the letter. But we're kind of just in a holding pattern at this point until we hear back on the funding requirements. And I know there's some, there will be some with the budget coming forward, we'll be looking at, what are some of the budget costs that we've had in the budget to, do some maintenance work up there, some improvements that are reflective of our funding request. That is submitted to the board. So really need to report on that.
Potential park enhancements.
All right, this is kind of a open-ended item on the agenda to discuss enhancements in our local park system. One item we have been talking about for a period of time is the plaza, and we have our stage, which is used by various community groups. Right now, it's a canopy covered stage, but it's by no means weatherproof. Usually during the summer months, we put up a temporary kind of shade tarp, fairly low cost, and at least it helps ameliorate some of the sun during the hot afternoons of summer. We did some legwork to get some cost estimates for either more permanent solution, looking at maybe a metal roof, recognizing that the wood members up there are getting impacted by time. We did some maintenance work to preserve them by applying oil treatment. But given the cost of a permanent solution, we also obtained a cost proposal for an all-weather tarp, that would cover the entire stage. This would be, whether say it's completely weatherproof or not, I'm not sure, but it would certainly provide a lot of shade during the summer months when we have Friday Night Live, but also provide some refuge from rain. And the quote that we obtained was $14,071. And I don't know if there's anything you want to say about the trip. You saw the sample product.
Yeah, so just one of the things on this quote, it's not listed on the quote itself, but the quote actually includes for installation as well.
Right, it's in there.
Oh, so this will be, it's glass, so the $14,071 includes the install. And I think the plan was, if we were gonna go this direction, is to have our staff be present when the installation is being performed, so we could see how it's installed, if we ever have to remove it. And this
Potential for that.
yeah, so one thing that we would have to do before the installation in-house, we would have to go out there and replace some of the 2x2s with members up there, which we can do in-house, just to make sure we get a nice anchor to the I guess cover. And And, yeah, so at this, we're just looking for some direction to see which direction.
And the
to go.
other thing we were kicking around, sorry to interrupt, but was the fans. Were we looking at possibly getting, because there's 8 junction boxes out there, 4 in the back, 4 up front, so power's going up there for the lights. I'm just wondering if we came up, do we want to put 2 of the like 60-inch, you know what I mean, fans, or a series of, I think that would be the best bet. I don't know what the price of those are, but if we're gonna run it forward to council, I think if we've got everything.
that.
Yeah.
All
Because I
weather
know
outdoor.
Yeah, a lot of fans have, fans blowing, so they just help move the air around, because now that it's gonna be covered,
Right, that's what I was thinking too.
Possibly make sure that they're like in
indoor, outdoor.
a quick removable type situation, because, throughout the whole rain and winter, if we could just easily remove them from there.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Plug in, put them on, plugged in, that way. People don't.
Put them away in the winter.
Right,
And just the temporary cover is an all-weather winter cover, right? So, supposedly it comes with some type of warranty for 9 to 10 years, so that would be under the cover, but I think it's a good idea to make it so we can remove them.
Yeah.
And then, as far as like funding for, kind of jumping ahead here, as far as funding for to purchase this, Carolyn and I discussed the possibility of using impact fees, park impact fees. We just kind of look to see if that's a fund that we could use for that.
Yeah, and I would, we'll have to consult with the city attorney on impact fees, because it is an existing structure, it kind of falls under maintenance.
Right.
But in lieu of impact fees, I think Measure M park funds would be
might be able
a
to-
source of funds that we could use as a park improvement. Impact fees generally are applicable to new development where we made that nexus with the rest of the plaza was a sort of additional incidents.
Well, my kind of thought process on this, I think, we've discussed a little bit of this, we're making the plaza, we've gone the route of finally getting the new benches in there, they look awesome. And we've got them painted, we've got the end caps painted, we've got all this, that's just the next step in the process right there, and then the plaza's gonna be.
Restrooms are there now.
Restrooms are there, we've done a lot to the plaza, shy of that, I think that's one of the most needed things out there, summertime, it gets cranking under there, when the bands are under there and stuff, so I think that'd be a benefit to everybody.
Yeah, and speaking of that, we, the council at the last meeting did adopt the policy for both the bench and tree donation program. We have one interested member of our community who's interested in buying a bench. Our very own council member.
Yeah.
And those are plaque ready, and I understand, Vice Mayor, your interest too, a resident that is interested in a plaque.
Yeah, and then that was further discussion right there, and we have to look at how that can be done, or it might be donations or something, but there was, individual in town that I think would be, he was kind of a pillar of Cloverdale. And I talked to his wife this morning, obviously we need approval from her, and it just almost brought her to tears, she thinks it's a great idea. She was gonna give me a whole write-up to put on there, I told her we're working with small 12x4, so let's keep it down to. Let's keep it down to something, but she would be 100% on board with that, and I told her I'd keep her in the loop, so. Yeah, that's something, I don't have a final answer on that, but I'm gonna talk to her and we'll see as it goes on, but she thinks that would be a great honor for that individual, so.
Why don't we, on that one, we can, I think, Hector, can we get a cost estimate for the plaque?
Sure.
Does it matter the number of letters, or is it pretty much?
No, it's for 2 lines. No.
You get 2 lines?
Yeah, 2
Good,
lines.
that's an answer I have
We'll talk
for
to
it.
that.
Yeah, we need to.
However many letters you get in that?
You get, I think it's like 32 altogether, like 32,
Okay,
depending on the font too. Because sometimes you can add like a bird or
Yeah.
stuff to it, so that kind of shortens the.
yeah, if we can determine the cost for that, then we can share that with Vice
Sure.
Mayor.
Yeah. Bottom line, she was pretty honored, and she thought, what a great idea, so she will probably be down here and all that, so I think it's a good plan.
One was a great community member, was a good friend of my family, and everybody's family around here, so
So,
great person.
And just sticking on this agenda item, our park superintendent has identified, we also, part brought forward the survey for Ferber Park, and, we've reported in the newsletter some,
Yeah.
near-term improvements, but Victor, for the benefit of the subcommittee, you want
Sure.
to give an overview of some of the.
Yeah, so
work you've done?
thanks, David. Yeah, so back in January 24th, Kevin and Mike and David presented to the city council the Ferber Park survey results. And this is the first time we've ever done it. And I think this is a great way to engage with the community and to kind of reach out to them and be like, hey, this is the little bit of money that we have. What kind of improvements would you like to see? And we had some great feedback. And I'm just gonna talk a little bit about the short-term results that we've been working on recently. And here, this is the list of some of the stuff that was approved at the city council meeting. So just recently, we added a new doggy station. They're small, and there's a picture of Miguel there, send those to Mike. So that's just a new doggy station. Now we have a total of 3 there at Ferber Park, 1 at each entrance of the park, to accommodate all the dog users, the puppies there, to have a place for their waste. And then we added some recycled garbage can receptacles. That one right there, we put it right next to the very popular pickleball court. So that's another they're small projects, but they're very, they're critical to the park. And then the one that we've been working on this week, the creek access. So that picture that Mike is showing us after we removed all the vegetation. There's another picture that I sent him. It's hard to see it, but there's a lot of veg stuff that we removed. And the plan is to we're gonna put some signage along the creek. But there is to create a place for someone to walk down there and look at the creek. And I think we're planning on putting a bench right there, somewhere in there. That we still gotta clean it up, but we started this week. So these are some
invasive plants.
Yeah, so that's French broom, which is very invasive. So we've been cutting it. We're gonna leave it probably along the creek for erosion. But yeah, we're working progress on that. And then the other items here are the cornhole boxes, which have been ordered. We're hoping, we don't have a picture of that, but we're hoping to get those here within the next 3 weeks. And once we get those, we're gonna install those. And then the park kiosk for information, to let the community know what types of events are happening in the park. That's also has been ordered as well. So we're hoping to get that here in the next few weeks. And then the striping the existing parking lot, we got a quote from Grand Paving. So we're working on a minor contract service agreement right now to get that striping down. And these are just items that we currently have the budget in the current budget year to take care of those. So we're just, making progress little by little. We're punching, getting rid of this list here. And it all for the main focus to make that park more inviting for our community.
How about the pickleball courts? Where are they gonna go?
Oh, yeah, right? Yeah, that's here at the bottom. Here's the list here.
Is that on the list?
Yeah, well, this is just the short term project.
sure it's on
The
the
long
list.
term projects, which I can touch a little bit on that. On the long term projects we did receive I just briefly glanced at it. We received a quote from Playground for Miracle to replace the existing playground.
Are they still in business?
Yeah, those are the ones that they're still in business, and the intent is to replace the current playground that manufacturer is not in business anymore. So we got a quote for that. That's gonna require more planning, and we're gonna bring it up to the city council. I don't know, but we might bring it here and then over to city council just so we can review that. And then the other item that was very high on the demand list was the stairs from Great Gables down to the park. So that's another one. And then of course the pickleball court and then basketball court were the big 4 items that are gonna require more planning and more budgeting.
Well, and scoreboard.
The scoreboard,
And lights.
lights.
Keep adding to this.
Just, well,
Parties around it.
yeah, so items we're gonna discuss during the budget season, workshops.
So I love the pet waste bags, because that is total stormwater compliant.
Yes, it is.
Yes, check that box, very good.
Yeah.
And at the bottom of the list is additional park staff too.
Yeah.
That's coming as well.
And I think, Vice Mayor, you inquired about the drainage on the site, and I know, Hector, you had the drain pipe checked, and it seems like it's flowing pretty good.
Is it?
Yeah, so it was, there was some sand. Right,
Yeah.
Inlet, we got that, and then it went to the point where it was just, it just couldn't take any more volume.
Right.
I think it was a bad design, they put in like a 2-inch drain instead of, so we went out and followed it to the creek, and it was
I
ripping.
was just wondering, because there's gotta be, I thought that would be a 6 or 8 inch or something to run that off of
So-
that northwest corner.
Exactly.
This way and all over. I mean, it turns into a lake,
So
you know,
the,
so.
so Furman Park, just for example, Second Street City Park, the high school baseball team is already using it, and they're having full practices, the field drained,
Yeah.
it's great. Vintage Meadows, the field is drained, but Furman Park, there's still standing water out there. The grass is so saturated, it's a different type, it's a clay. And, I don't know, it's just, you know, it's pretty, there's nothing we can do. At one point, I don't know, Jay, if you remember this, but there used to be a spring there. And Mr. Ferber, right in the corner there on the northwest corner, there used to be a actual, like a pond. And, there used to be full of fish. So when I was a kid, I would go out there and fish on those, you know, but, so I think there's something going on there.
That's where
there's
that
still
south,
spring.
that's where that corner.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that was great.
Right.
So I think-
They never donated the best part of the lots.
No. Once it drains out, it's a beautiful park. I mean, it normally takes about 2 weeks additional from the other parks. And once it drains out, normally, you know, we use that park for T-ball and little league, so they're able to practice still using it. The park is getting a lot of attention, which is great.
All right, streets, number 3, update citywide striping.
Can we talk about the scout hut, or is it not time for that yet?
Oh, where is that down? I thought
Well,
that
it's
was-
park, I don't know, I was thinking of the
Are
potential
we-
park enhancements.
We can, absolutely.
Well, so anyways, I think some tentative good news, it sounds like we are kind of lined up to get some grant funding to improve the scout hut, so that's super exciting anyways.
Yeah, we were recommended for, Kevin represented us at what's called the Sonoma County Technical Advisory Commission, which oversees CDBG funding, and recommended for $250,000 grant in CDBG funding for, ADA improvements.
How are they gonna, I got a question on that, you know, right there, I guess it would be on the south side of that scout hut where the little gate is going in there and there's about 5 oak trees. Are those gonna come out?
Right.
Well, I think
Well, I
that
mean-
we're gonna probably leave that to like an architect that
Okay,
who's gonna design that thing. You know, I don't know that, I'm not a fan of taking out any healthy trees if it's not needed. I don't know if they're healthy trees or not.
You think we are right now, but
Yeah.
it just depends if,
I'm just not a fan of putting all the grant money in and then having to rebuild the roof. You know what I mean? I don't wanna take out trees either, I agree with you,
Sure,
but
yeah, some trimming for
things-
maintenance.
yeah.
And I
do some
know,
evaluation and prune them,
Right.
and spend some money on them, which we do every year, at 7th Street.
yeah, I think, I've got my eyeball and I don't know what kind of tree it is, but on the approach to get to that scout hut, I can tell that there's some root intrusion into that path, and so I'd be looking at slicing and dicing a couple of those roots. I don't know.
Big tree, yeah.
You can cut those fruits. But that's good news, and we'll be, building that, the funding is for next fiscal year. It's gotta go to the board for final approval and submittal of the HUD. So we'll be looking at, you know, start of next fiscal year. Kevin's already coordinating what's called, since it's federal funding, we have to do NEPA compliance. And the way the funding works is we have the cost of that NEPA work is on us, so we'll build that into our budget. And try to get that done so we can hit the ball rolling on the project. But we'll probably be identifying, you know, maybe some additional costs to, you know, make the Scouts cabin fully operational within the next 2-year budget cycle. So the ADA improvements included, of course, access, improving the restrooms, the kitchen,
Windows.
and the windows. So
Yeah.
That's a good start. Yeah, the patio area. You know,
yeah, maybe if we
gotta see how much it costs and all that. But,
Yeah, well, there-
I mean, the main reason for the money is to make it accessible, ADA accessible, so. When that's motivated in that, just what that scope is.
Just a quick question backing up to the Provo Park. You mentioned the cleaning the brush so people can get down into the creek.
I think the plan is just to be able to look at the creek.
Okay.
So what we're gonna do, I touched up on it a little bit, we're gonna put some signage to stay out of the creek signage,
Okay.
because we do have some little critters that live there, so,
Well, I was thinking fishing game. Right?
yeah, we're not encouraging folks to go down and play in the creek, it's just to look at it, instead of, to have lunch, a picnic table.
Gotcha.
And we do have to get rid of the French broom anyways, so,
Okay.
but that was just the intent, yeah, I actually already purchased, I purchased one sign and I had one in house. So once we get it done, we're planning on just adding some wood chips out to the creek and then put some additional signage in the picnic table. And then just to touch up on since we're on the scouts cabin, just a little report on Cavallo Construction, who has been busy, working on the flood damage repairs at the scout hut. He's completed the job. I got a text from him earlier today. He did some sheet rock. We found some black mold. So we had to remove some sheet rock and treat the mold and added some framing, as well as, replaced some carpet. So we got all that taken care of. And then, to avoid some of this in the future, we added a French drain on the back of it's not 100% completed yet, but on the northwest side of the building. We're gonna, it's not completed yet, but we should be finishing the next couple of weeks or so. We're hoping to get it finished before this next storm. The one out, we have like a trench that the water will drain out if the storm comes in. So we're doing that to avoid some of this incidents for future.
Because I know on the west side of that cabin, I think there's old sandbags that were along.
Yeah, we got rid of all that. We got rid of them. We got like a little V ditch.
Gotcha.
And for now, we had gravel in the base. We're thinking about, that's where we're gonna put the French drain and let the water drain out. And last time we had a meeting with FEMA. It sounded pretty promising that we're gonna recoup some of those funds through FEMA. So that's gonna be great once we get that funding, but then we can put it back into the general fund.
Nice.
All right, we're ready to move on now?
Yep.
To the streets update, citywide striping plan.
So, and there's a few different things. I know Derek and crew have been, very good at kind of moving along with a lot of the striping needs in the city. I think that's going well. We're also looking at, from some time ago, the subcommittee direction was to get a plan to stripe Cloverdale Boulevard, Treadway and Foothill. And so that largely kind of went on the back burner. But moving that forward again so that we can kind of potentially line some stuff up here in the summer. I did just get back the 90% comments on Cloverdale Boulevard striping. I hope to get Treadway and Foothill shortly after that. I think the big kind of dust up there was we got our pavement management plan that recommended large segments of slurry seal on the boulevard. So the last thing we want to do is throw down some new striping, just to go slurry seal over it and have to redo it again. And so really, getting those projects to line up, I think is ideal.
Boulevard goes, how far are we talking boulevard?
It's the whole thing.
The
We went
whole thing, all the way down.
from the north to the south, yes. And so, what does that look like? I feel like the city's probably gonna phase that, rather than do it all at once, but. Anyways, I think the first step is to get the striking plans back and formalized and then be able to kind of piece that work out.
I know I had one gentleman come up, a straight older gentleman, and coming out of where Ray's is, right, that's turn left onto the boulevard and go north, there's that yellow section in there, and he says that needs to be brightened up, I can't see it good enough, and, so it's starting to rear its ugly head again.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So, good. Anything else? Any other comments on that?
No, we're rolling into more thermal striping. We know we're doing it in March. We're gonna hopefully, if it gets warm enough in April. Emphasis on SDOPs and directional arrows, especially because we're adding some stop sign out here, and the SDOPs in the intersections we did last summer we did the crosswalk striping, so now we're gonna come back and finish those things.
There was one section, and I don't know, I've never put that stuff down, but there was one section I noticed going up into Porterfield Creek, coming up Hillsburg Avenue, right by Vintage Mineral Parks. They did that a while back, but I noticed about a foot and a half of one end, it just shelled off and just broke like a plate. So I don't know if it didn't adhere properly or what.
We were fighting, we had some,
Older
product,
stuff?
yeah, that was on the shelf that was, you know, 5+ years old, which
Gotcha.
really didn't have a shelf life, you gotta. I mean, it has a little bit of a shelf life, but it gets really grilled.
Yeah, it was just looking right at the ends there. Everything else that's getting driven over looks awesome. Yeah. Right. Number 4, update on the Allen Avenue.
Not much of an update, the project is, you know, capped off, we're in the final stretch with FEMA, they're as of now not requesting any additional information for us, it's all in their court to do the full review and issue funds if, and we're hoping they do.
Thanks.
We sit there. First Street overlay, so informal bids, so we're probably gonna see more like, we're gonna see bids back in the end of March or April. Carter Bridge, we have no update to that, we know that they're going to, Johannes will update us when they get a, kind of a working plan for the summer, I don't know, have you talked to them yet?
I haven't.
Yeah. Right. How about water is drought relief water system project.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna kick it over to you, city engineer, Padaka, to get an update on our DWR grant. Vanessa's been working hard to move that project along. The key component is well, there's multiple components, but a couple of key components are the SCADA and then also the well rehab and replacement. So
And the AMI meters, so, you know, the AMI meters, swapping the meters out for smart meters, if you will, I believe is almost to the
Yeah,
finish line.
We're currently in a holding pattern now because of site audit, differential happened and we wound up with too many 3/4 meters and they have to send them back and get them to 1-inch meters. So we're kind of in a holding pattern on that, and the other conversation we're having is, they've been drilling the concrete lids. And, we've seen a couple of spots throughout town where it's just not acceptable to have, the lid drilled, so we're requesting a recessed lid be placed at. The current company doing the job is really only making available a black recessed lid. And staff has requested that the company do the due diligence and require them to give us quotes for gray lids that would match existing colors.
Right.
With the recess, so hopefully this Thursday, they'll have the information to me on that, and then we can move forward with them. Cost allocating how many lids we will get compared to how many they were in drill, it's kind of just a number crunching.
And can we talk a little bit about the holding pattern on those meetings, on those meters?
Yeah.
We're under a clock on that, to be reimbursed for that money. So is there any jeopardy that
No, we'll easily still do that.
Yeah, well, and for the DWR grant, so the meter project is kind of complicated because there's multiple funding sources coming in for that work. And so the DWR grant is intended to pay for half of the meters. And I think we're pretty much lined up to tap that out here pretty quick. At least as far as the state grant, the DWR grant. But, you know, even still, the final project completion is still a couple of years down the road. And I think there is.
We're doing pretty good.
We're doing pretty good, yeah, even with that.
And with the AMI project, we did site visits at all the combiner location sites, worked with the water department to get the optimal mounting locations so they didn't interrupt with any new SCADA communication devices that are coming from the SCADA project. So we have that pretty squared away.
So in the next component of that is the SCADA expansion, supervisory, control and data acquisition. And so really, it's just kind of a smart way to monitor these remote sites, rather than the guys having to go up there, once or more times per day to look at things. It's really just kind of, the information is brought to you and it's monitored, pretty much remotely. And so, just to rehash a little bit, we needed, an extra kind of approval to get a radio path consultant underway. So ArcSign is doing the bulk of the work. We also had a separate radio path study consultant, and they've been out doing their work. And so the teams have all been meeting pretty regularly. Design is definitely underway. The radio consultant has completed their field investigation, and really to identify any infrastructure needs for the clear radio paths. The radio consultant is going to be providing a report of their findings supposedly by the end of this week. So that's great. It's definitely moving along. The project team, ArcSign, and the city personnel, Derek and Darren, I think the tentative plan is for them to meet and review the 30% design package and the radio consultant's report, potentially next week on March 6th. But that depends if the radio consultant is able to deliver on time.
We have a tentative meeting set.
Tentative meeting date. And so, that's all moving along really well. Kind of an outside sort of thought, and what the initial findings are is that the radio consultant study preliminary findings show that multiple of these remote sites have very limited line of sight. And so I think what we're looking at is potential for cellular connectivity instead of like the radio path, at least on some of these sites. And so, the proposed architecture is either to kind of go in and construct some very tall and expensive towers, or go to cell service. And so what does that look like, and what are the options there? Anyways, and so the most feasible alternative is what it's looking like is 4G LTE cellular radios where no line of sight is needed. But it would require reoccurring monthly costs for the cell service. And so that's kind of what the preliminary findings are. So that's the SCADA. And then the next part is for the Wells project. And the project kickoff meeting was held. We saw Jeff Wanless, he is part of that team for the Wells project. And we've also got Pete, who is leading that up. They met with the city staff in mid-February. And so they're doing, instead of a 30% design, they're doing what's called the basis of design. It's pretty much the same thing. Anyways, it's, one group will call it one thing and the next group will call it another thing, but the basis of design is certainly underway. Right now, what we're looking at, so the feasibility study for the Wells project is an older report by Ludorf and Scalmanini. And it's an older report that had all kinds of recommendations for the wells and what was going on there. It's not necessarily wrong, but the current team is kind of questioning the economy of rehabbing well 8 rather than just doing a full-on replacement. And so I think we're going to go with the most economic, ideally, what is the best answer here? But right now we're kind of questioning, maybe it's not so good to rehab well 8. It would be potentially cheaper and better to just pop in a new well 8. And the other thing is, I think for, new well 7, the feasibility study recommended 3 exploratory drillings. And the team now, he's a geologist, is on the team, and he's questioning the need for that as well. He thinks we can get it with 1 exploratory drilling. And so that's good. But we're definitely looking at in multiple facets, rather than kind of just taking the old information and going with it.
Vanessa, are we looking on the east side of the river at all for a new well?
Not yet. I think that the east side of the river, there's potential to look over there when new development comes. I don't know that there's a nexus for that at this time. There's a lot of stuff getting back across the river, and all the things involved in that, but it's on the radar. I think that would probably be a little bit more memorialized in the master plan update when the city undertakes that effort.
Well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, David, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have a water pipe strapped underneath that, First Street Bridge. Capped on either end.
Chase, yeah.
I have
Right.
also heard that rumor. I don't know for sure. I've heard that as well. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a chase, is what it is, it's
I see.
like a sleeve, a giant sleeve that you can, for future.
Got it.
I don't know like how the condition of it,
Right.
or any of that.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I think ideally, I mean, we'll want, because of the grant, the timelines. Timing is critical that we complete this well 7 and well 8. I remain hopeful that because we've seen declining production in those wells, that with rehab and replacement, we'll be able to increase our ability to supply potable water with the new wells in such a manner that it may not be necessary to build an additional well. Well, we don't know that yet, but that would be, kind of an ideal optimistic solution would be, we're well positioned in meeting all of our demands with, replacing these well 7 and well 8.
Yeah, and on top of that, on top of, potentially bolstering supply from the wells, I think we're also looking at, because of the nature of the existing wells, you get a lot of muck in the filters. And so, the hope is that we don't have to backwash as much, which is a tremendous drain on the potable water.
Ocean River Water Forum.
All right, well,
Environmental.
in some regards, the water forum has kind of met its goals of doing the community outreach, and I think what we've seen since is the water agency, Sonoma County Water, the Mendocino County Inland Water and Power Commission step up, along with the Round Valley Indian Tribe, to form a JPA. They're calling it the Eel Russian Project Authority, and this is actually something I'm working on to request of the mayor, is to bring forward a presentation update on the ERPA, as we call it. This is kind of an effort to recognize, I think the forum had some constraints with, it served its purpose to do a lot of outreach, but given the timelines associated with PG&E's surrender application, there was a desire amongst these particular water groups to find solutions more quickly than might be provided through the forum process. So they've established this project authority. They are working away on a potential what they're calling a 2-basin solution, which involves removal of both the Cape Horn Dam and Scotts Dam on Lake Pillsbury, with putting in place a kind of a pumping diversion system. I don't have all the details on that. I think that's where we want to get Sonoma Water in to give us kind of an update on where they are in this process. There's a lot of moving parts again. PG&E now is opining that maybe they're still moving forward with the surrender process, but there seems to be some ambiguity in terms of what they're doing. So I know there's a lot of politics at play here. Congressman Huffman seems pretty committed to the removal of the dams, but there's also, which I think has a lot of interest in the Eel River watershed, but there's also a significant interest in maintaining reservoirs, or at least the upper reservoir for recreation and benefits, and preserving that as a diversion tool to get water into Lake Sonoma. So again, we know it's of critical importance. We continue to monitor and track the process, and hopefully we'll have a presentation, give the full council an update on this on all the planning efforts, at council.
Lake Mendocino, you said Lake Sonoma.
Lake Mendocino, yeah. Thank you.
So many lakes.
Yeah.
That's a long trip.
Great, 6 acres mutual water company, pre-annex.
All right, well, Vanessa, you were on the call this morning, you wanna
I do,
give the
so-
latest update?
We continue to have a monthly call with the group. It's tremendously valuable. It's a lot of people in the room, the state, different departments in the state, 6 acres representatives, South Cloverdale representatives, a couple of engineers, and certainly some public. And so just kind of moving through those processes. There are some agreements with the state, and so those are getting extended. I think that something is set to expire at the end of this month, and so the powers that be are moving through the process to extend the agreement for the wastewater project. It sounds like the 6 acres water and the 6 acres annexation agreement is going to come to council. What did you say,
March
Kevin? March 13th. So you guys will see that. We do have some preliminary indication that they're going to start actually reimbursing us. They have asked us for some invoices. And so I think we're going to wrangle my invoice time for these. I've been tracking it separately. And also the city attorney's time, and at least try to get some cash flow back into the city's coffers. So that's excellent. So we're going to coordinate that. And I think that getting some reimbursed dollars will go a long way, at least for the city, to recognize and have some confidence that we will get reimbursement for some of this work. We are moving forward. We provided comments on the 60% plans for the water, for the 6 acres water. We also provided comments on the 30% plans for the 6 acres in South Cloverdale wastewater. A lot of moving pieces here. Let's see, what am I missing?
It's funny.
Yeah, and getting a lot in the weeds. They just need to do a little bit more work on really identifying which parcels are going to get annexed. Today, we were looking at a map that, for example, did not include the IROC parcel. And I think that is actually going to come into the city. And so they've still got to do a little bit more work on their end to just really verify which parcels are coming in, which parcels are already in, who has sewer service, who needs sewer service. And I think the water's a little bit more clear, but the project teams are definitely working on that. It sounds like there is, for the wastewater component, there is a draft project report anticipated to go out to the group by the end of this week. With a final potential for mid-March. It is looking for the wastewater. So 6 acres is going to be the applicant for the state grant funding for that. For the wastewater, there is no clear applicant. It's a bunch of individual property owners on septic tanks. And so I think the city is going to have to be an applicant for the applicant for that. And so that is going to be to take from the 30% design all the way to the 100%, and then to get into construction and beyond. And so we are unfortunately going to commit to that for the wastewater side. Now we're also having a sticky wicket though with South Cloverdale. They don't quite have the champion that 6 acres does for the water, getting the water consolidation. And so it sounds like, the city's probably going to be that applicant as well, but we're going to push back. And I'm going to ask the state for something in writing that commits that we will get a reimbursement for that. And so David has asked us to provide a separate scoping fee just to really kind of cement in the reimbursement potential for that. And so, we're pushing back as much as we can, but we really don't want to stall these projects too much. But we are very mindful that, city's got limited resources. We don't want to wait 6 years for cash flow to start happening. It sounds like people are finally starting to listen to those arguments.
Well, Vanessa, it's really aggravating, and I know we have nothing to do with it, but the county's sitting there doing nothing. And here we are, we're gonna put on that out there and be the applicant for South Cloverdale District. Yeah, I just don't think that's right anymore. And I'm glad to see that we're gonna get the commitment from them before we start any work on that. And it's the same with the 6 acres sewer, wastewater. Here we go, we're gonna be the applicant for that, and how do we get reimbursed for it? Backing up for a minute, you mentioned IROC, being part of the annexation. Are you referring to the annexation that we're putting together for South Cloverdale or 6 acres?
I believe they are South
Yeah.
Cloverdale parcel, yes. Yeah, 6 acres pretty kind of consolidated between Mile Lane and, what was it, Rancho?
Yeah, El Rancho.
El Rancho. And then South Cloverdale is a little more convoluted. They're sort of peppered around south and in city limits, outside of city limits. Yeah, it's a little bit.
Well, and the only good thing about that is we'll get some sales tax revenue out of that. For that product, and they do a good business, so that's good, but. I don't like us having to take the lead on any of these projects when the county just sits on their butt and does nothing, and it's their water districts. So here we go. But
Well, I mean, I don't think anything's memorialized. I think at this point for the wastewater projects, it really has to be the city. There's nobody else to do it.
Is the county part of these meetings that you're having?
They are not. I have not that I'm aware of. I have not seen the county.
Yeah, and I don't know why we're not insisting that they be at the table.
Huh. I can ask the question. I can certainly ask the question.
You'd sit back and do nothing when you don't know.
Well, here we are, we're very proud them and happy minding our business, and they come along with a mandate saying you'll take these 2 water districts and.
And then bail.
Yeah.
I am.
You know what I mean?
I'm certainly continuing to be in there saying, we really don't want this work. We can't take on this work. We would have to hire somebody, and what does that look like? I can certainly ask the question if it's possible, because County of Sonoma is the applicant instead, and start inviting them to these meetings.
Right.
Yeah.
See, I'm probably makes your head explode.
Exactly, that's all right.
You do that.
Yeah.
That's what you guys pay me for.
There you
Stick
go.
with it.
All right.
Okay,
Anything else on 6 acres or pre-annex? We good on that?
I think we're good.
All right. And what do we have? Wastewater, recycled water planning study.
All right, well, I'll give a quick update. We submitted grant applications to both the Bureau of Reclamation and the State Water Resource Control Board for funding the recycled water study. The purpose of the study is to look at the requirements to produce and distribute tertiary treated recycled water to probably primarily agricultural customers, but also looking at opportunities within the city. We have received correspondence from the Bureau of Reclamation that we will be funded to the tune of about $500,000. Because the way we applied was 500,000 in federal funding, 500,000 in state funding. With the state deficit coming forward, what we're seeing with the state agencies is they're all peeling back the amount of funding, and luckily Redora with West Yost kind of has kind of an interview to the regulators. They wanted to cut back the $500,000 funding to $75,000, which would have put us on the hook to fund a pretty significant component of the self-fund the work. But she's been working hard and representing us to the state board, how critical this funding is to us being able to, even consider moving to recycled water, and recognizing the fiscal constraints that the state's expressing. At least so far, has got them to commit to at least $300,000 in funding, and what they asked for is this kind of a revised scope of work or proposal to reflect, the revised budget. And so work with Redora to revise and update the scope to meet the state's requirements. And so we're just in a holding pattern right now. It was kind of unfortunate to hear the state's position, but I think we're hearing that with other funding initiatives. We heard that from the library, for example. They had some library grants that got clawed back considerably. So I think there's probably a mandate across the state agencies that they all cut back their funding. But I'll give it to Redora for being in there and really representing us and fighting for every dollar we can get to fund this project. Because it's an important project and the council supports it. And so we're just really waiting to get these funding agreements all kind of buttoned up, executed, and then we can, start, the timelines can start clicking. So.
And so I think, what that looks like, it's not totally gloom and doom. I think when we first heard the 75K commitment, it was kind of like, what, now it's not feasible anymore. And so the state has committed to, provide at least half this. So the federal funds require a 50% match, state funds require a 50% match, and ideally, they would essentially match each other and the city would stay whole. And so with this kind of new sort of dynamic, the state has agreed to fund 50% of the feasibility study. So it's the full feasibility study is 300K. The state's portion would be 150, the feds would be 150. But there is an avenue, we would just have to keep applying for future phases. So it's not that we're not funded for the rest of it. We just have to keep going after the rest of it, at least from the state. But we are seeing full federal funding to the tune of $500,000. We just have to keep, I guess, throwing the hook in the water to keep going after the state funds.
Anything else on that? All right. No, 11, update sewer manhole rehab.
We are in contract with Mixes Services. I guess we're just waiting on, have they got back to you on a solid start date yet? Not yet. We're on there now. Be next month. Yep. So we're just waiting for them to let us know when they can start. We hadn't planned on them starting until the sun comes out anyway, so that one, we'll apprise you of that when we get the start date. All right, so number 12 there.
Oh, before we totally leave wastewater. Okay, I have another little minor insertion. Hopefully this isn't too far outside of the box. Windsor is doing a biosolids project. This might be of interest to you, Jay. And so Windsor is looking at doing, biosolids, a wastewater treatment plant generates a product, if you will, and it's all dewatered. It's I guess decontaminated, chlorinated, disinfected for the most part. And the city actually pays quite a bit of money every 3 to 5 years to get their biosolids removed and trucked off site. A lot of new regulations in place. That stuff's going to be very expensive to be disposing of in the future. And so, regionally, we're looking at what are some solutions. Windsor is looking at doing their own biosolids facility and building a facility that will essentially take the product and make it into, I believe it's called a Class A exceptional quality biochar, which anybody, your grandma could go drive over there and grab a bag of fertilizer and use it. No regulations. It's going to be a fabulous product. So what Windsor is doing is opening the door for regional collaboration to maximize regional grant funding and asking all of our neighboring agencies if they're interested in kind of going in on some grant funding. It almost sounds too good to be true. Windsor is proposing to be the lead applicant for the grant, and they would actually, if agencies are interested, for example, if Cloverdale is interested, Windsor would just expand their facility to accommodate Cloverdale's biosolids, and then turn that back around as a potential commodity.
What's a facility like that cost?
Between 50 and 500 million.
That's good.
And so I know.
Versus the cost of 3 to 5 years.
Well, I think that.
I think you're talking grant funding and.
Right, exactly. Grant funding.
We're shipping ours to them, so
Right.
we're not having a cost at all.
Okay, gotcha.
We're not-
That makes sense.
For the city of Cloverdale, it
Right.
really is like a too good to be true, and I'm like, well, what's the catch?
Yeah.
There is
Well,
no catch.
Haven't found one yet.
Well,
no.
the interest is in the regional collaboration, and regional products are way more grant competitive. And Windsor's gonna do it anyways, whether there's funding or not. But I think with this regional kind of partnership potential, there's potential for the grant dollars to come in. but they're totally ready to take charge. What they're looking for is a letter of interest from the city. And so I think, but this is quick. I think that her applications are due on April 1st. So this is why I'm trying to squeak this in here to see, is Cloverdale interested? I'm interested, but is Cloverdale interested enough to provide a letter of interest that Windsor can put in their grant
I think it
application?
would be worth bringing to the council and get the whole council.
Do we have the price on the last time we did the biosolids? It was.
We could dig that up. I feel like Westfield's did that for you, so I'm sure he has the
Yeah.
bids and all that stuff. Yeah,
It was a 6-figure project.
Yeah,
You know, that's something that we would, hopefully if everything worked out right.
Get rid of
But
that.
again,
right.
Would Windsor be charging us for our product to be dumped there?
I don't think so.
they're leveraging the
Yeah.
fact that they're taking our product to get more grant money for their product.
And use the region as going after that grant.
That's right,
Gotcha.
that's right.
So the more people they get, the more grant money they're gonna get to finish this facility.
So we're pretty interested to track it and see how it goes. So far, no catch. but
Yeah, so far.
You know
this
how
is-
everything is.
I'll follow up with Veronica and ask
Yeah.
her.
Can Hector use his new dump truck to bring it down there?
Yeah. Might be a few grants. Good idea, Josh.
I'm so proud of that.
Fantastic.
Well, yeah, like I said, bring it to council. Let's see. I mean, if there's no hooks yet, why
So-
not?
Yes.
Best idea yet.
Come on.
Yeah, so since it does have to happen pretty quick.
Yeah.
Then I would imagine this would be on the March 15th
Yeah,
agenda as
that's
well.
what I was, yeah, let's do that.
And I
If not
know.
the 27th.
Well, yeah, but if she's gotta submit by April 1st.
Okay.
That gets real tight. Anyways, but yeah.
You're doing it before, that's fine.
Yeah. Fair enough. And for anybody interested, we are looking at some new regs around PFAS, and I can't remember what that acronym stands for, but it's essentially,
oral substance.
yeah, it's a lot. It's a mouthful. It's basically what they call it our forever chemicals, and it's chemicals that are in wastewater. Really, I don't know that we have it here. We don't test for it, but there are regulations. It's really around like fire retardants. We think that it may be in the orange stuff at Cal Fire dumps. But you know, you see it in manufacturing when they do, you know, kids' clothes or rugs, everything's gotta be fire retardant. And these forever chemicals are turning out to be pretty bad. And.
It's in toilet paper.
Is it?
Firefighting foam, all of that.
Yeah, everywhere.
We actually tested for that in the wastewater. Two years ago.
Did we have any?
Nope, we look good.
Good,
So,
solid.
yeah,
If it's
we have that
a,
report, so.
the Windsor facility is gonna treat for PFAS. And so, you know, if that is an issue in the future, we can check that box if we go in on that.
Now it's rolling out.
Knowledge that we need right
Now
now.
they're looking to do it into the water treatment.
Yeah, we're
services.
rolling out a program, we're doing a trial program, for
Yeah.
having that into the water. That's gonna become, it's gonna go from the UHMR 5 probably to a mandated test. We're preparing for that.
Thank you for letting me sneak that in
Problem.
All right. Public Works Department update, we covered OIT, streets, BMI project, the solar project is still continuing at the wastewater plant, PG&E and the company we contract with Citrica. They've kind of met an agreement with the location and a way to route their different cables from the solar panels and interconnections, so that's good. They've uploaded that onto our OpenGov, and we have issued them an encroachment permit for the wastewater plant, and so that kind of balls in their court for the next step. The other thing that I wanted to bring up to council was we had the opportunity to have Fair and Pierce. We have an active transportation plan, and they're doing a sidewalk study currently right now in some highlighted areas for it's for bike routes and so and for places that don't have sidewalk. And they've offered, since they're in the city doing studies in these areas, at a cost of between $5,000 and $8,000. They will completely do a sidewalk study for the whole city and provide us with that study and GIS data and all that. And I do feel that that kind of is in the vein of that, the TAP report, the PTAP and all that stuff. Having that data, presented to us on hand is really good, and I think that's a fair price for them to present us with all that data. That way going forward, we can use that to leverage more grant money for bike paths, striping, streets, all that stuff.
Yeah, well, kind of sticking with streets, we've been working with Sonoma County. We believe there's opportunity for collaboration and coordination on street paving work. The county has identified as part of their annual street paving program that they want to pave the county portion of Clovercrest Drive. And the county portion, there's a section there between the boulevard and the county portion that would not be paved under the current program. I asked whether they could include paving the city section in their proposed work, and they've indicated that they can. They've submitted a preliminary cost estimate for that work in the amount of $115,000. They're asking for us to enter into an agreement with them for reimbursement of their costs. I've asked our city attorney to take the lead on that, just what that agreement looks like. So it's kind of exciting because we have a county public works director who's very interested in working with us and coordinating. And I think there's a tremendous value in having, if they're mobilizing the contractor to perform those improvements, to go ahead and do the city section down to the boulevard. And with that, I think there's also some just was identified some adjustments in utilities that would be necessary in raising manholes, pretty standard stuff. So it brings it up to just about $120,000 in total. There's overhead there, some contingency built in, but with the agreement, that would be something from the council for support. My assumption has been that this subcommittee would support that if I've been trying to move this along, but ultimately it will need to be brought to council. But one of the prizes subcommittees, they're working diligently on trying to get prepared for the upcoming summer paving season. And once it's ready, we'll bring that forward to council to memorialize that. I think there's, again, it's a write a check scenario, and we get a section of our local roads paved that's in full condition done, and we're a number of residents that express concern about it.
And you're gonna bring the 5,000 to 8,000 for the study for the sidewalks?
We have to look, when do they want an answer by? As soon as possible, right?
The question on that one would be is if we have sufficient budget now to cover.
Yeah, we do have sufficient now to cover the difference in adding the rest of the city to that report.
Where's that money coming from?
Existing budget, because currently we're using grant funds for that, right?
And while SCTA is working on the active transportation plan, they're basically doing the work. We had a presentation at council, if you guys remember that.
Yep.
But they've said as a little bit of that's part of our membership with SCTA, but as an add-on, they're saying we can do this complete sidewalk inventory study while we're doing this for an extra 5,000 to 8,000.
And checks the box on getting that completed.
Yeah.
That's citywide.
Yeah, and it would give us GIS layers too, so we would have that all on the computer. It would be good.
And another thing to sneak in here, under item 12, public works update. Your city engineer needs a little bit more budget to get through the end of the fiscal year. I had hoped to skate by, but I think with a lot of the grant funding and other things, I will be looking for a budget adjustment. And so I'm curious, should we look at something to get to the end of this fiscal year? Or should we look a little bit beyond that? I think right now I've got a schedule to the end of the fiscal year, and I just need some budget to supplement that.
What are you talking about?
Roughly, I think no more than 150K I could possibly sharpen that pencil, but
150K to get us to win.
to get us to the end of June, the end of the fiscal year. And really, that's just kind of looking at the current burn rate. I think my invoices right now are coming in at about 45K.
And just to add context to that amount is that some of that time comes back to us in developer reimbursements, grant funding. So it's not a direct hit to the general fund. So it's
Just a patch to get us down the road.
we cost allocate it to either direct costs or to the time that's spent to the various activities. And Vanessa's doing a little work in water, wastewater, the DWR grant, developer, well, I say Vanessa, the team of West Coast, developer reimbursements. So I think you look at that number, but we have to ultimately look at what's the impact to the general fund.
Yeah, as far as taking it further, what were you thinking, Vanessa?
Well, and I think, the easy kind of question is, go with the current, I think last time I took a contract amendment to city council, what I want to say, that was like 3 or 4 months ago. I had hoped that the budget would get me through the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah.
And, we did a couple of additional grant applications, and it just drained the bucket, if you will, a little bit faster than I had anticipated.
Yeah,
And so the easy thing would be just a patch to get through the fiscal year. And then, next fiscal year, we could come back again, and either look at 6 months or a 1-year horizon. That feels like the easy, rather than kind of go in and piecing schedule versus budget. Anyways.
well, I'm in favor of doing that, and of course, David's gonna decide whether we take it out beyond June 30th. I'd also be interested to know the breakdown of that, David, how much goes to the enterprise funds and how much to the general
Right.
fund.
Do maybe a breakdown based on past invoices, kind of how those have been broken out. Because they're broken out they're divided up.
Yeah, and so really, kind of everything is sort of mixed in. But I have broken out everything that's got potential for reimbursement. So the various grants, Baumgartner, Rancheria, the annexation certainly. And so, I can definitely give you that level. Where it goes, from water to wastewater to general, I think I would need some help with in those points.
Because one of the roles that West Yost has served for us, and I think it's been very beneficial, has been on the grant side. And we covering the costs of the West Yost team has been with some of the money we budget for grants. That strategically they were staffed to be able to provide that service. They've done a great job. So, we think city engineer, there's a whole host of things behind that. Inspections, I mean, so, there's a lot of different services that are being provided. So we'll have to break that out. I'd be kind of inclined to break it out for both just completing the end of the year, but also looking at the next 6 months so that we don't just have to keep coming back. If we can get a number.
Okay, sure. So to get us through, then in theory, the next 3 quarters.
Yeah.
The end of this fiscal year.
December 31st, yeah.
Oh, perfect, thank you.
Yeah. It's vitamin D.
Just looks painful.
You're welcome. Airport.
We're continuing to work on the currently scheduled, grant funding projects. With the, FAA. We're gonna be doing budget this year and hoping to kind of possibly roll some more budget into the airport, for maintenance and equipment rental and things like that. And, try to. There's a couple of projects that kind of need to be done in-house that we kind of in the past haven't hit our budget, but we're gonna try to make sure it's solely in the airport budget. So that's where we're at there.
What about the price of gas? You know, a while back, going back a couple of years, we were missing the opportunity to capitalize on getting a better price for the gas. Our gas sales significantly up, down, where are they?
I mean, currently, I mean, this is the low part in the season, so they're down right now. But as a whole, I can give you that information.
In hangar rents, are they all up to date?
Paid, as from what I see, yes, there has not been an update in hangar rents in many years. That's another one of the, many things on the list for the airport that we're trying to revamp.
David, I think we need to do a study on that, maybe, you know, at your convenience, staff's convenience. It doesn't have to be right away, but I'd like to compare us to other hangars in the area. I know before, when we tried to raise the rates, it was like pulling teeth, but we did what we had to do. And the gas sales was another area where we're losing money. So I'd just like to sit down with somebody and chat about that.
Yeah, and one of the things to your point, Councilmember, on hangar rents, we recognize there's a lot of pushback from the pilots and airport user groups on kind of wholesale increasing the rental rates. What we had done, we modified the agreement to build in a CPI adjustment so that at least keep the rates in check with the increase in the consumer price index. And the issue is we haven't negotiated new agreements with all of the hangars, but we like, for instance, with our primary entity out there, we did build that in so that the rental rates or the hangar rates increase, but we need to bring that to council, I think, is the updated lease agreement and get support for fully implementing updated lease agreements for those hangars with the CPI adjustments just happening automatically rather than having to wait a number of years and renegotiate. It just happens incrementally every year.
Kind of like those mobile home park owners.
Right, exactly.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, where are we at? Future agenda items. Anybody got anything for future agenda?
Well, we listed one, I think, Vice Mayor, you had us
Yeah,
to
it was the-
the downtown decorative lights. and
Yeah.
We'll just work with you to research and then when it's ready, bring it forward.
Gotcha. I can do that.
I've got one on the cemetery.
Okay.
Al Del Cid, I think most of you know him from the Sons of the Legion. He has more or less taken the lead over the past few years to maintain our cemetery. And he and I were talking, actually, it's been a few months now, about a concept that he had of doing cremation nests. We put a block of cremation vaults, whatever you want to call them. And he's got a couple spots up there at the cemetery, up the end of the big driveway. Apparently, there's a nice flat section there. He's envisioning a couple nests and then a meditation bench and a pretty nice area so that we could raise some revenue on selling those sites. And I'd like to invite him to a meeting so that we can hear him out. It might be something we might want to consider doing to get some revenue coming out of the cemetery, because right now we get absolutely nothing.
Right.
And I think we have one, maybe two plots left that have already been sold. I know Tom Montoya passed away not too long ago. And of course, he has his own cemetery up on the hill. But then my neighbor also said that, her father was cremated and they really would have liked to have done something with him in Cloverdale. But they couldn't, so now she's trying to get a headstone, for his cremation spot. I think it's down in Windsor. So I just think there's an opportunity there, as cremation becomes more popular to capitalize on that a little bit. He seems to think we can get about 100 nests, there, which is a considerable amount. Of course, it comes with its issues of vandalism and securing it and all that stuff, but.
Well, the last few years I've been working with Al and the cemeteries. It's kind of one of those, it ended up in the parks department, so if it's okay with everybody, I can follow up with them.
Sure. Yeah. He'll
See
take
where we can
it,
take
show
this.
you what he's thinking. And I just think, we owe it to, the cemetery folks, to come.
One of the
Keep
things
that
I was-
place looking good.
I think it's great. One of the things I was proposing for this year's budget, for next year's budget is not only to have a line item for our vets, Al is very involved with that, but there's also some community members, trips that are needed, some repairs. They don't have the funds, and this is from service requests that came in to my office. They don't have the funds to make those repairs for their loved ones that were buried, 100 years ago. So this year, what I was gonna propose is to just put a small line item to, maybe we can address some of those folks that have financial restraints.
Just a couple things, I forgot to ask you, we were on parks, is, I know we were leaving some, bean bags
Sure.
at City Park in the little box. Are they walking, disappearing?
No,
Still
they're still there. They don't have the color anymore. They have the color that's been exposed by the weather, but so what I'm planning to do, I have another set. And then now that we order the other additional 4 boxes, we're gonna add, now that the nice weather is starting to come around, we're gonna replenish them with some brand new ones.
Good.
That's the plan, but people are still using it. It was a good investment.
Any other future agenda? All right, let's move into H and adjourn the meeting at 3:51 PM. Thank you all for.
Good. 3 hours later.